This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. I'm Sal Berry, and with me is Clemente Lisi. And today we're going to do a Setrospective about the 1975-76 Topps and O-Pee-Chee Hockey card sets. Both of those sets are celebrating, I guess you could say, their 50th anniversary. I don't know how much of a celebration it is. I do know that Topps Now hockey stickers have been using that design for some of its parallels. And so that made me think, that set's 50 years old. So might be a good time to talk about those designs, talk about those sets. I guess as good time as any. And we'll also talk about a couple of upcoming conventions and then just get you caught up with what's been going on with us because we've been gone for a while. So Clemente, how you been?
It's been great. It's good to be back. I've been really busy, but it's good to see you and it's good to be back in the ears of our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I hate to say I've been busy. We've all been busy. We're all adults. We all have lots of things to do.
Yeah.
I think. So, yeah, I mean, we're both teachers. And for me, I'm on quarters. So like that first, second week of October, we're already at midterms. So I had to get caught up on grading because I had to let students know if they were passing or not passing. And if I'm behind a couple of assignments, that doesn't really help me assess their grades. So I kind of had to put my attention on that. And then the other thing was that I did a Transformers convention. I also do toy shows. Card shows are card collecting is my number one hobby, and I love doing card shows. I also love doing toy shows. I don't really collect toys anymore, but I do them. So I kind of have like feet in both places, and so I was doing this big Transformers convention that was taking place in Chicago, and so I had to just get a lot of stuff ready for that. Like I had some comic books, some Transformers comic books that were like 40 years old that I had to like dig out. And I don't know if you ever bought comic books or even like magazines, like you put them in those bags and those boards, but then over time, those get really old and yellowed and you look at them and they go, it's nasty. And then you try to like peel off the tape on the back and the tape sticks to the bag. And so like I had just like a bunch of comic books that I had to go through, a bunch of toys that I had to go through and price. And so that was that took a lot of my free time. That took like a lot of my focus. Not only just the weekend of that show, but like the weeks leading up to that show, because it's just an extra thing that I normally wouldn't do. So I had to find the time for that and for grading. So that was that was what I was up to. What about you? I think you had
busy with work, obviously, and busy with lots of writing that I know both of us do. And in addition to work, and then my daughter's high school soccer team went pretty deep into the playoffs. So of course that was time consuming, exciting. And you want to build time around that. And so the weekends are busy, and then this Halloween, that is always very busy because everyone's kind of excited about it. And so there's just so much going on. And so I have to admit, I haven't even been really focused on collecting or cards, really. I haven't bought anything in a while. I haven't been to a show in a long time. So it's been this is a bit of a dead period sometimes. I know that the expo's coming up, and often we've gone to that, and that's been like our big, our big push to jump back into the hobby after the national. I will admit the national does quench that appetite for a long time, but I feel like now the holidays are coming. And the winter's here. You're in Chicago, I'm in New York. It's cold. I'm looking forward to some regional shows and seeing people again and doing more content and that kind of thing. So hopefully, I love Thanksgiving. That 4-day Thanksgiving weekend is always like a really great decompression time for me. So I think I can see the light at the end of the tunnel here in terms of we're only like less than a month away now from that.
I love the day after Thanksgiving and all the nonstop hockey that they have from like 11 in the morning to like midnight.
And the leftovers with it is awesome.
Oh my God, that's so great. I just kind of roll out of bed, roll to my couch, Yeah, have some leftovers, watch hockey all day, noodle around with my cards, because
Yeah.
I'm the type that'll sit on the couch, watch a hockey game, open a box of cards or
Yeah.
sort cards or put cards in pages. I mean, that's always just been like, I mean, I I guess we all have a little bit of I don't want to say ADD, but like sometimes I could just sit and watch hockey, but sometimes like I want to keep my hands busy. You know what I mean? And if you're like, oh, I got these packs to open, and something happens, you look up or you keep your eyes up, and then you like look down, open your pack of cards, go through it, and then you hear, you know what I mean? Like you can
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It becomes almost like a ritual. Like I've made it a point now to actually maybe have a box or buy series one and have it for the break for Thanksgiving, or open some packs or open something. The truth is, I think people listening will understand. You could always be sorting, you could always be organizing, you could always be doing something like that. So I mean, because there's always piles of stuff, especially after big shows like the National or the Expo, people have stuff they bought and haven't put anything away. So yeah, it is nice. As I get older, I realize I'm appreciating more the winter and being indoors more. I feel like, when you're young, you love the summer, you love being out all the time, and I enjoy being out. But I've learned to love fall and winter, and maybe because hockey is a big part of that now, and watching games, and yeah, I'm looking forward to just a little relaxation, and I feel like everyone feels that way. But when you have kids and when they're doing stuff, it's busy. It's good to be busy, but it's also good to catch up here with you and talk about the hobby a little bit.
Yeah. So I want to share a quick story. When I was at this Transformers convention, um, I'm, just doing my thing, and, people are coming up. How much is, they never ask me how much is this because I price everything. But, they'll come up and they'll just say, like, oh, do you have this? Do you have that? I want to buy this or whatever. And this guy walks up to me and he introduces himself. He's like, hey, you're Sal. I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, my name's Bernie. We never met. I'm like, okay. And he's like, but I recognize your voice. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I listened to the podcast. And I'm like, and the room's like crowded and noisy because it was pretty crowded that first day, especially like, and it was like in a hotel, like ballroom or convention room. So it was like a big room, but there was like a lot of people in it. And it was hard to hear somebody 5 feet away from you and, or even closer. Sometimes you had to ask people, "Well, I'm sorry, what did you say?" And so the fact that he was able to like recognize my voice in a room full of voices, I was kind of flattered. Especially since I think we all find our own voices a little irritating. I find my voice grating. So when people say, oh, I recognize your voice, it was just like, whoa. So like, wow. So anyways, Bernie was there with his son, Joshua. They're both Transformers fans. They're both hockey fans, though Bernie's more of a hockey fan now. He ended up giving his son his own Transformers toys to become like the cornerstone of his son's collection. And his son is like a casual hockey fan, definitely more of a Transformers fan. But it was just nice to like meet some people. Well, Bernie especially, because not only does he listen to the podcast, he said that when he got back into collecting a couple years ago, he found the Puck Junk blog. He started reading the articles. He really enjoyed the fact that we don't focus on value. We focus on what's fun to collect, like what's worthwhile collecting, not like what's worth money, but like, is this a good set worth having in your collection? And he appreciated that. And he appreciated our podcast because we do these deep dives on some of these older sets. And I just thought that was really nice. So Bernie, I know you're listening, and, thank you for the kind words and for introducing yourself, because it's always nice to meet people that listen to the show, but when it's not where you expect them, when like these different fandoms collide, when you're at a hockey show and you find somebody who also likes, G.I. Joe or Star Wars, or you're at a Transformers show and you find someone who likes hockey. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. You just never know who's listening. And I've been to, shows where people recognize my voice, but there were card shows, so that kind of makes sense. So when you're at a type of a different show or you're out not in that context, it is a little strange, but you just never know who's listening. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And then, there were a couple other people at the show who were wearing like hockey jerseys or hockey t-shirts or hockey hats. Like, one guy was wearing a Shoresy jersey. So we ended up talking about like the past season of Shoresy and like, like our anticipation for like the next season. And then I saw another guy in a Preds jersey, and I'm like, so who's your favorite Pred? UC Saros? And he's like, yeah, probably. I'm like, man, he's really been off to a rough start this year. He's like, yeah, he has. I mean, and Saros is on my fantasy team this year. So I'm like, he's killing me. The Preds are killing me because they're letting in 4 or 5 goals a game, and he's making, 30, 35 saves, and they're not scoring anything. So it's just been disappointing. For the Preds, I guess, but it's neither here nor there. Just want to touch on a few conventions really quick. So it seems like these next 3 weekends, we got a big show, a small show, and another big show. And but these are all worth knowing about. The first is the Sport Card Expo in Toronto, which takes place November 6th through 9th. It's at the International Center in Mississauga, Ontario. So I will not be at the show this year. You will not be at the show this year, unfortunately. Just things, just as they happen. It just didn't, the timing just didn't work out for either of us. What's unfortunate about that is that there are a lot of hockey autograph guests, and this has become something I've become more that I've been embracing more, like buying autographs, paying for autographs. Like I've always been willing to do that. The thing is that like, I feel like a lot of times, like the prices are just so out of whack for like what my appreciation would be. So I go, oh, this guy's saying an autograph. Okay, $30, $40, cool, right? Or, oh, $199. Oh, that's a lot to just get a rookie card signed. You know what I mean? Like it's almost not fun because I like to get cards signed. That's like my first choice. So like, if it's a player that I really like and their autograph is inexpensive, I'll get maybe 1, maybe 2. I mean, I don't know if you were with me when I got Gilles Malash's autograph last fall, but I got like 6 or 7 things signed by him because I was just such a fan of him, even though I never saw him play. And, he just lasted in the league for like 18 years or something ridiculous. And he was with the Seals, and he was with the Penguins, and he was with the North Stars. And so like, to me, that was worth it. You know what I mean? But then when you're like, oh, it's this guy and he's charging, like I said, $200. But anyway, so the point is a lot of guys in that kind of like $20 to $50 range. This isn't all of them. I just grabbed some names at random. I mean, the newer guys obviously charge more, like Patrice Bergeron and Patrick Marleau. But then there's also Bill Ranford, Andy Moog, John Casey, Yari Curry, Serge Savard, Matt Sundin, Steve Thomas, Willie O'Ree, Duncan Keith, Jennifer Botterill, Matthew Nees, and Yvonne Barrett, who is the guy who played the goalie in Slapshot, Denis Lemieux in Slapshot.
Right.
Trade me right effing now, that guy. So, and well, I regret. Yeah, go ahead.
No, my only thoughts is that, the Expo has great hockey signers. I know we talk about the National, other places that don't have any or don't have good names. Always really great names here, but only a couple things to keep in mind. One is Canadian taxes are fairly high. So even when you're buying something for $79, it's going to cost more than that. Obviously, the taxes are higher in Ontario than they would be, let's say, in your home state, in the United States. And then in addition to that, you have to also understand that you're paying also to sort of meet them and have that exchange with these athletes. And so if it means something to you, go for it. I did notice that on the signer list, there's a lot of really great Oilers players, obviously, from the 80s and 90s, which is great. And then having Willie O'Ree there is awesome. I've never seen him at a show before. So, yeah, I wish I was there. But having said that, the Expo always puts on a really great show. I think when you mentioned some of these names, I said, don't worry about it. I'm sure if we go next year, the names will look even more impressive. It's just the Expo is just an impressive place. I did think about them over the weekend because the Blue Jays were in the World Series. And I thought, wow, if the Blue Jays had won the World Series, there would have been a lot of excitement in the air here at the Expo. And oftentimes Blue Jays players do show up, or former ones do. I know Maple Leafs players show up, both current and former. Just a great show. And for, hopefully people in the audience listening, if you've never been to it, you should definitely make a point of going either this week or at some point, in the spring or next fall, when I hope that both of us will be back there, because it really is a great show. And I've come to grow accustomed to going every year, at least to one of them. Almost like the National. It's not the National, of course. The National's way bigger, but it is so much hockey here that you can't ignore it.
It's so concentrated. Like
right.
It's mostly hockey. So if that's your jam, you're going to be happy because there's just so much. I mean, you could easily spend 45 minutes at one table looking at what they, through all their boxes, whereas most shows, it's like, oh, graded baseball, graded basketball, autographed baseballs, football jersey. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of, and then you see somebody who has some hockey, you stop, you look, and then you go, oh, okay. And then maybe it's worth a look. This one, I mean, you can just spend like, especially people that just bring like stacks of stuff. Like there was remember that one guy, he had all those like poster size things under his table.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it was funny. I think like, what was it? I bought like it was like an uncut set of junior cards. And it had a Shea Weber autograph on it. And the guy's just like, $10. I'm like, okay, $10 for a Shea Weber autograph. And I think he was at that show, and I think he was charging like $80 an autograph, or his agent or whatever is charging like, and here I find an autograph. No, it's on a junior card and it's on an uncut sheet. But that's the thing, is that like you would rummage and you would just find such cool stuff for like, or like those McDonald's card sets that I was finding for like $1 a piece or whatever. I mean, it was just such a cool place to find things. So
right.
I don't know. I'm going to miss it this year. That's for sure. But yeah, it'll just make me come back stronger.
Absolutely.
Plus I was at I didn't sell at the National. I did some buying at the National. So, I mean, I still got my big fix, or my fix for a big card show, but it's not the same, but good, also great. Our friend Sean Sullivan, who's he's a longtime collector of game worn jerseys, and he's a friend of the Puck Junk podcast. So he put together his own convention called the Chicago Game Worn Jersey Expo. So that's taking place on Saturday, November 15th at the Oakton Community College in Skokie. It's a smaller show. I mean, I think it's like maybe 30 tables, 40 tables. I don't want to embellish and say it's bigger than it is, but it's like a one-day local show. But what's interesting about this is that there are people coming in from out of town for this, because people who collect jerseys, like, you don't find game worn jerseys as often as you find like cards, obviously, right? This is more of a niche thing, more of a specialty thing. I'm not saying that you can't go to the Expo or can't go to the National or can't go to the Chicago Sports Spectacular and find game worn jerseys. But now I feel like a lot of times those things are auction items and not just something that you like just outright buy, if that kind of makes sense.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, I'll have a booth there. Obviously, I don't have any game worn jerseys. I do have a couple of game used sticks I'm going to bring. I have a couple of practice worn minor league jerseys that I'm going to bring, and then I'm going to bring some cards, just because. I mean, I wanted to be a part of the show because it's something hockey related and it's something in Chicago, or near Chicago. So I feel like I need to help it. You know what I mean? Like participate. I want to participate. I want to be included. You know what I mean? Even if I'm not necessarily like a jersey seller, I still have hockey stuff to sell, and I think it'll just be fun to see. So I'm really excited about that because I know how hard it is to organize something like this and to promote something like this and to put together something like this. So, I want it to succeed. I want it to become a yearly thing. And if you're in Chicago or around Chicago or in the region and you like game used hockey jerseys and memorabilia, you should check it out. I'll be sure to post a link to it. Although if you go to Facebook and search for Chicago Game Worn Jersey Expo, you'll find everything you need to know there. Last up then, the following weekend, so it's like 3 shows in 3 weekends, we got the Chicago Sports Spectacular, which is taking place November 21st through 23rd. It's arguably the second largest sports memorabilia show in the world. I know we talked about, is the White Plains show bigger? Is the Chicago Sports Spectacular bigger? They're both pretty much on par with each other, right? Like pretty big regional shows.
Both pretty big. I have to say, I think Chicago's bigger.
Yeah, just more floor space.
Yeah, there's definitely more floor space. Maybe the same number of tables, but the configuration seems tighter in White Plains. As you know, the Donald D. Stevens is much bigger, and because the Nationals held there, even at the Spectacular is smaller, but it's the floor space is still massive, so you don't have bottlenecks as much. And yeah, no, Chicago's great, and they have great signers, of course.
Yeah, unfortunately, at this show, there's only 2 or 3 hockey autograph guests. So there's Paul Coffey. We all know Paul Coffey, Hall of Famer Paul Coffey. You got his autograph last year, didn't you?
2 years ago in Toronto.
Yeah. So he'll be there. I'm thinking about getting a rookie card signed, although he's in a blue Edmonton sweater. And if I remember correctly, the photo's kind of dark on that card. So now I'm debating like, oh, do I get that one signed or in silver, or do I get a different card signed? Because I don't think I have a Paul Coffey autograph. So I want to get something signed by him. Emilio Estevez, who played Coach Gordon Bombay in the Mighty Ducks movies, he's going to be there signing autographs. It's like something like $140 or something. It's up there. And then if you count actor D.B. Sweeney, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Cutting Edge about the ex-hockey player who becomes a figure skater. I think it came out in 88.
Yeah, no, I know the movie. I know the movie. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, I know that like in one of the like promotional stills, he's wearing a Blackhawks jersey. And then in like another one of the promo stills, he's wearing like a USA jersey. So I guess he's supposed to be some hockey star who then becomes a figure skater in a pairs competition. So it's like the hockey player and the figure skater. And will they ever get along? Who knows, right? So it's kind of like Battle of the Blades before Battle of the Blades, that Canadian show where they pair a former NHLer with a figure skater. And I'll admit I haven't seen I've seen the Mighty Ducks movies a number of times now. I haven't seen Cutting Edge. There's like a handful, probably quite a few hockey-ish movies that I've never seen where like maybe it has a hockey player, but it's not like hockey isn't necessarily like the main focus. But like I said, I'm really stretching here because there's like a ton of Chicago Bears because it's the 40th anniversary of that 1985 Super Bowl championship. So there's like a ton of Chicago Bears at this convention. And then we had the 2016 Cubs almost 10 years ago. So there's like a lot of Cubs and a lot of Bears at this show, but no Blackhawks, no former Blackhawks, and, Paul Coffey, which I guess, yeah, okay, technically he was a Blackhawk for like, I don't know, 7 games or something. I don't know. But anyways, there's going to be like 200 dealers, over 400 tables, and I'll be there. I'll be booth number 40. So come find me. It'll be fun. Say hi and get a bad hockey card, Hall of Fame trading card set, and hang out, talk hockey for a bit. It'll be fun. So you want to talk about this Setrospective, this 75-76 Topps and O-Pee-Chee Hockey card set. My first question is, do you have this set or either of these sets?
I don't have the whole set, but I have many cards from that set.
Okay. Yeah, I have both the sets. And it's funny, the 75-76 set, that's something that I found for like, I don't know what I spent, but it was like at a show. It was like maybe like $100-ish, maybe it was like 80, maybe it was 100. And this was like maybe a good 10, 12 years ago. I mean, it was just so random. Like I didn't have the set. So I'm like, oh, cool. Full set, complete, bought it, right? Done. The O-Pee-Chee set I bought on eBay, and it was kind of like not in the greatest of shape, but it was like at that point, I think it was the only set that I did not have from between 72, 73, 79, 80. I'm still missing some cards, but like pretty much every set from like 72, 73 to 93, 94 O-Pee-Chee, I had like pretty much every one except for 79, 80 for obvious reasons, Gretzky's rookie and stuff like that. And then earlier than 72, 73. So 75, 76 eluded me. And I'm just like, how do I not have this set? So I ended up buying one on eBay, and most of the cards were in like just, I guess you'd say VG condition. I mean, creases, maybe not, the best centering, whatever. But I ended up with having both of them, now and it's funny because it's a set that I don't really like. I'll talk more about that, but So I never really had the incentive to upgrade it. You know what I mean? Where I go like, oh, my 85, 86 O-Pee-Chee Patrick Waugh rookie card has some wear on the front. I really need to upgrade that card, right? And then I look at like my 75, 76 O-Pee-Chee set, and I'm just like, I got it. It's in pages. Good enough. Checklists are marked. Yeah, okay, maybe one day I'll upgrade them. But just to low down on the sets. So 75, 76 Topps had 330 cards. It was actually the biggest Topps hockey set until 90-91 when it had 396 cards. Because before that, Topps sets were like either 66 cards, 132 cards, sometimes 264 cards. And then 75, 76 was that high water mark where it went to 330 cards. Why? I don't know, because that's just such a strange number, like literally not an odd number, but just a strange number. Made sense for O-Pee-Chee because they would do like a series 1 that was like 110 cards, a series 2 that was 110 cards, and a series 3 that was 110 cards. And Topps, though, they usually did things like 132 cards or 66 or 198 or 264, or like their football sets were like 396. Now the O-Pee-Chee set, 396 cards. The first 330 cards are the same as the Topps set. The last 66 cards consist of 65 player cards and 1 checklist. So really, you're only getting an extra 66 cards. By the way, that checklist is erroneously numbered 267. So there's no card number 395. There's just 2 card number 267s. But one of those checklist 267s has cards 331 to 396. So, we just consider that to be card number 395, even though it's not. All right, so just a couple of quick retail notes. Back in the day, a wax pack of Topps cost you 15 cents. It gave you 10 cards, 1 stick of bubble gum. A box had 36 packs. And then there were also rack packs, and there were also 3-pack bundles, which are kind of interesting because you can see this one in the picture here is wrapped by Baseball Card Exchange, but you could see here that it's like still wrapped in something, and it has like this thing that says 3 15-cent packs with 3 sticks of bubble gum. Like I guess that was the draw. No inserts though, no stickers, no patches, no glossy cards, nothing like that. Just the cards itself. O-Pee-Chee, on the other hand, a pack cost 10 cents. You got 8 cards, 1 stick bubble gum, and a box had 48 packs. And by the way, I want to talk about this really quick because this is just one of those interesting things that I found out like years later. So the wrappers on these packs had the Topps packs had something that said join the Topps Sports Club. Like some of the wrappers said join the club. There were like different versions of the wrappers, but this one in particular, there was an offer to join the Topps Sports Club. And what it was for $250 plus an empty hockey wrapper, you get a newsletter 3 times a year. You'd get an 8x10 glossy photo of Bobby Clark, and then you'd get packs of various Topps sports cards before they were released. Now, how cool is that? You're a kid and you end up getting like baseball cards maybe before your friends do. Like that would be, I think that'd be pretty exciting for like 1975. I know we were just born, you were born in 75, I was born in 75, but like, just to think back to that era though, like even like if you think of like the early 90s, like if you got cards before your friends did, right? Like mind blowing, right? Like remember a kid at school got that Brett Hull promo card, the Pro Set promo card, because he got the Pro Set Gazette. So he had that card before everybody else. It was like, oh my God, Pro Set is making hockey. That's so cool, So
plus, the 70s and even the 80s and early 90s, it was all about if you can cut something out and mail it in, and then you had to wait the 6 to 8 weeks or 6 to 10 weeks. I mean, I remember like whatever it was, whether it was Star Wars or it was the Gazette, Pro Set, or even something with Topps, like you would just mail it, and then like literally the next day you would just check the mail every day, waiting for this thing to show up, and then you'd forget about it, and then it would show up in the mail. It was always amazing. And the only thing close to that today is like when you order something on eBay, but it's not as exciting as it used to be. But as a kid, yeah, anything you can cut out and have your mom or dad write a check for you, because you couldn't write a check. You had no checks back then. You were 8, and they would send this check, and it was, so I mean, obviously I didn't do this promotion. I was born that year, but things like this are always kind of fun to talk about, but also just you're able to find the ad for it, and it's kind of cool. I'm sure there's people who did this when they were kids, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like those mail away things, like with the Star Wars figures, especially because you didn't need to send a check, you just sent the proof of purchases. So my mom was always mailing away for those. But then when I got into GI Joe, and then it was like send 5 flag points plus a check for $1, and then it was really hard to get my mom to write me that check for $1. So my grandma would always do that. So, and I remember one year, like my grandmother, like she'd write me the check. And then, I remember like one year, I'm off on a tangent here, but when Fandoms collide, it was like for like a Sergeant Slaughter action figure, because he's the new GI Joe member.
GI Joe one, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the GI Joe one. Because I remember like one year it was Hooded Cobra Commander, and I remember just waiting and every day asking my mom after school, did the Hooded Cobra Commander come? No, it's like Bart Simpson. Where's my mini spy camera? Where's my mini spy camera? Where's my mini spy camera? Right. So then I remember one day after school, like we'd exit and there'd be like a courtyard. I remember my mom standing at the end of the courtyard, and she's holding up like this plain brown mailer box, and I knew what it was, and I just ran like right towards it. Right?
What's funny? What's funny about what you're saying is that I remember stuff like that myself, but I remember like other kids being so jealous and saying, how'd you get that? And I'm like, it was in the back of the box. Like I just cut it out. And it was almost like you got rewarded for following through. I remember this happened with the Mum-Ra. I think you had to, in Thundercats, you had to mail in for the one before he transformed.
Yes, the Mummy Mum-Ra, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone was like so impressed that I had it. I'm like, it's not that hard. Like, yes, you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to actually mail in the thing and the UPC code and all that. And, you got to fill out the little, form, like just like people seeing on their screen. And it's like, it wasn't a lot of work, but it was like, you were like the man if you got that, like, because not everyone did it. Not everyone at least in my class did it, or not everyone in my group did it. People across the country obviously did it, but it was true. It was like suddenly you had something they wanted to trade for, and you were like, no way, I have no idea I'll get another one of these. Like, it took forever to get this one. I'm not parting with it, and
right.
So it's, and then it's true because this is pre-eBay, pre-all internet. You really didn't know where this stuff existed. You couldn't go to a toy store. They didn't have it there.
Right.
And people just talked about like it was like a legendary thing. Like, oh yeah, you got that in the mail, like you were part of a special club. And so in a way, it's something that we've lost in the digital age. We've lost this, but it would still be kind of cool on the back of food products. I've always been a big fan of food products doing either toy or card collecting stuff. And I realized they don't, the card companies and even the food manufacturers don't think there's a market here, because probably would be guys like us mailing in for it, because kids don't care about this.
For like 100 of them,
Yeah, well, exactly, because now we have the money and the time, and we would do all kinds of things. And I think the manufacturers realize this is not a kid thing. This is a very old nostalgic thing. And look, we're talking about a 50-year-old set for that reason, but it's lost. And every age has its promotions and its collecting methods, and that was a big part of it. So the fact that you can get cards in the mail, and I mean, I know Topps now does that now, but it's not the same thing. This is a little different.
Yeah, you're right about that. And actually, I ordered those Gavin McKenna Topps Now cards, and I mean, it was the only excitement there. And I guess it's cool to buy cards and get the ones you want and get something, again, that's kind of exclusive, because those are print on demand. But, they tell you when it's on sale. They tell you when it's off sale. They tell you when it's shipping. You got the tracking number. You could like see like where it is. Like, oh, it's going to come today between 3 and 8. You know what I mean? Like, so there's, right. I guess that kills some of the suspense, and that's okay, because the worst thing is when it gets lost or it just never gets sent, and you had no way of knowing 40 years ago. And to just piggyback on my earlier story, like when my grandmother wrote me the check for a Sergeant Slaughter figure. I didn't get it in like a year. And then she wrote me another check to get a with a William the Refrigerator Perry. He was also a member of G.I. Joe. And I got that in like 6 to 8 weeks. So she like wrote this handwritten letter because it's the 80s. And she wrote to Hasbro. And then she like noted like check number 976 was cashed by you on this date. And my grandson still doesn't have his Sergeant Slaughter figure. And like in a week, I got it. Like, you know, just... felt like they should have sent me 2 for making me wait that long.
Well, you know, back then, I think you had to have, you know, mistakes were made. Obviously, companies made mistakes. The mail was never perfect. But back then, I think you had to have really good customer service because to contact somebody, it took time. Yeah. So as opposed to today where anybody can like call somebody out on Twitter or send them a nasty email, and these companies are inundated with complaints generally. And so it was very different back then. If they got a letter in the mail like that, I'm sure they were like, oh, we made a mistake, or maybe it got lost. We'll send another one, like no big deal. Or if they couldn't replace it with that, they'll send you something else. Like everyone's got stories like that. I remember when we were in 8th grade once, we all were given a company. We all had to mail to a company and ask them, you know, it was basically like, we love your product, blah, blah, blah. And everybody in the class got stuff in the mail.
Wow.
Like t-shirts or like food. I remember this one kid in our class. I mean, I grew up in New York, and he wrote to Goya, which is the bean company, right? They make beans and other products. I mean, this guy got so much stuff in the mail that he brought the box to school, and it was like t-shirts and cans of beans and stickers. And it was, I mean, he had enough to give out to like half the class. And it was kind of funny. And, you know, it's funny because you really build brand recognition that way. Like, I still remember that. If I see Goya, like, I still remember that. And so it's, you know, it's the kind of thing I'm sure Topps and Upper Deck and other, you know, Pro Set and other companies were really doing a lot of that in the 80s and 70s because they were trying to build, you know, branding and you wanted to build that connection with the buyer in this case. Yeah.
So last note about this though is that the other thing that was kind of cool is like when you joined the Top Sports Club, I guess there was this insert inside one of the newsletters, but it was for a hockey news subscription, and you would get a subscription for $7.95, which was a $2.55 saving off of the $10.50 subscription price, and that was for 37 issues. So crazy to think that 37 issues of the hockey news back in 50 years ago was like $10.50, or you could get it for $7.95 if you basically just sent that coupon. And it's funny because that like flyer I just found randomly at a national one year. I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. And it was like $2 or something. But and then I write for the Hockey News, and I have a column called In the Cards. So one time I did an In the Cards column about the tie-in with Topps, and that really impressed my editor. He's like, wow, how like, you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't have known about that in the 70s. And I just said, hey, can you check? Can you look up and tell me how much the subscription was back in 1975? And he's like, all right, let me check with our archivist to find out how much a subscription was in 1975, because I wanted to verify that information was correct. But I just thought that was funny that it had a tie-in with the Hockey News,
that is funny.
To save $2. So, all right. So obviously the Topps and the O-Pee-Chee cards look more or less alike. They're printed on different stock. The top stock is a little like whiter on the front. The O-Pee-Chee stock's a little more yellow on the front. There's no Topps or O-Pee-Chee logo on the front, so you can't really you can kind of tell which is which, but you really can't unless you flip them over. And then on the back, that's the giveaway, right? Like either has a Topps copyright or the O-Pee-Chee copyright, although what I always look for is the French text. If it has French text, it's O-Pee-Chee. If it doesn't have French text, it's Topps. Of course, the O-Pee-Chee, the backs always look brighter. I'd say nicer, although then, the front, the Topps cards have nicer edges, and I feel like the fronts usually look better, but then I feel like the backs of the O-Pee-Chee cards, because they're printed on that brighter stock, they tend to look nicer. Does that track with you too? Or
no, it's totally true. And what bothers me about these years is that the logo isn't on the front. So even when you go to a show and you see something in a slab and you take a closer look at it, you can tell by the back, or you have to look at the very bottom, the copyright. I do find, it's true. I find the fronts of one and the backs of the others being best. It'd be great to merge them somehow. I do agree with you that the O-Pee-Chee quality control was even worse at Topps so often, and that's why the 7980 is so famous for the Gretzky rookie year for having the edges being so bad, because that was something that was common throughout. I think the O-Pee-Chee machines were particularly rusty and dull, and that carried on for years probably. But no, it does track with me in terms of the, when you see the brighter back, I know instantly. Generally, that's the O-Pee-Chee, but sometimes age does age everything out in a slab. Often, sometimes you can't see it, but sometimes I have to look at the copyright at the bottom and it says Topps or it says O-Pee-Chee.
There was, 73, 74 O-Pee-Chee. They did some on the darker top stock and some on the brighter O-Pee-Chee stock. So it's weird because sometimes you'll find O-Pee-Chee cards from 73, 74. So a couple seasons back that have like the gray backs. And it just seems so weird. You know what I mean? Because you look at it, you think it's a Topps card, and then you look closer and you go, oh, no, that's O-Pee-Chee. But anyway, so looking at the design of the fronts, it's pretty basic. You got the team name at the top, you got the player name at the bottom, and then you got the position in the colored puck. And honestly, I'm not a fan of the design. It is so basic. If that wasn't a hockey puck, this could be for any set, for any sport. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that I don't really, you look at the designs. Think of like the mid 60s, like maybe the ones with the pucks at the top that had like the team name, or like the TV set design, or the 71, 72 with the bubble letters, or like the 74, 75 with like that hockey stick along the side. You know what I mean? Like all of those like cool looks, in the bright colored backgrounds. And then you get to this and it's just like team name, player name. I guess we should put a puck on it. Yeah, okay, let's do a little puck. Yeah, okay, now it's a hockey card. I don't know. For me, I'd say it's the second worst set of the 70s. The worst, I think, is the 77, 78, which just has the team name at the bottom really big, but otherwise it's pretty much like just a squarish kind of design. So not really like a super big fan of this set. I guess that's why I never upgraded my O-Pee-Chee version of it.
Right. No, I will say it feels in that sense generic. Like if you're making a homemade like cards of your like junior hockey team, you would have this like template design almost. But I'll give them credit for a couple of things. One is it's very clean because the white makes it very clean. And I think this is like those years where we're transitioning from like vintage into the junk wax era. They didn't call it that then, but we know that now. So it was trying to become modern, but it's still got a long ways to go. So I hear what you're saying. It doesn't stand out as like an iconic design from that era at all. That's why I think a lot of people forget about this set or don't have cards from it. There's other reasons for that, a bad rookie class, and we'll talk about that. But so I think it gets forgotten in the mid shuffle of all of that decade, because the 70s have some really great sets. We talked about that on the show before. This is not in that top 3, top 5 for sure.
No, and a couple of things. Like, yeah, it is kind of plain. Yeah, I feel like for a while they were kind of transitioning away from like the busier, more eclectic designs. And then, although I do like the next year, the 76, 77 with like the text that's at the top that's kind of like on a curve. Like, I feel like that's a little more exciting than this one. I think what bugs me about this is that like it's so like static, right? Like there's nothing exciting about it. It's just like it's very horizontal. You got the team name, the player name. It's like, okay, the angled puck gives a little color. You got like some colorful names. You got some rounded corners. And then you have like a mix of like action shots, head shots, warm-up shots. So it kind of runs, as Tim would say, runs the gambit. And Tim can't be here today because he's got a work trip. And Tim will get you caught up on what he's up to when on the next podcast, I guess. But runs the gambit, as he says, or runs the gamut of the different types of photos. You got your posed shots. You got your close-up headshots that are almost like mug shots. So you look at Larry Robinson getting hit with that heavy flash, right? Like you can see the shadow behind him on the wall where they just said, here, stand here. We're going to take your picture for your hockey card, right? And they just take his picture. Got Bobby Orr, and it's not the best picture of Bobby Orr. I don't know. It looks like that Flames player is like running into him, even though he's not, but it's like looks weird. And then
yeah.
And then some warm-up shots, some just a variety. So I guess that's okay. The backs, typical Topps. You got all your stats, you got your bullet points, you got the little cartoon, which I love. You got the vitals. A couple things that I miss on hockey cards. I miss the how acquired. I love to know, how did this player join the team? Were they drafted? Were they a free agent signing? Were they from a trade? You know what I mean? Like I like that sort of stuff. And then I like the last amateur club. Actually, I don't think they have this on this. No, they don't. They did on the 80s. They'd say like last junior club or last amateur club, right? And I thought that was always cool. They don't have that here, but they got the little cartoon, which I think is nice. Obviously, the O-Pee-Chee version, they have to like consolidate some of the text. You look at like this Bobby Orr card, and they like truncate some of the text, because they have to have it in both languages. So like the Topps version, you usually get a more full biography of the player or whatever that info is. In the O-Pee-Chee version, it's going to be less. Subsets.
I'll just one point before we go there.
Yeah.
Look, we talked about this many times with Tim and yourself. The backs back then were where you got all your information. So you had to have a lot of stuff back there, and like how a player was acquired and all their team stats. Like you needed that because you couldn't Google it, right? You couldn't look it up on NHL.com or whatever. We've lost that. I wish the card companies would nonetheless do it just as an information/design element. It's not meant, I know you're not going to learn it from back there. Maybe you're going to Google it, but maybe you will learn it from the back. I mean, I have to tell you that in modern cards, I pretty much don't even care what's on the back anymore. I don't even look at the back, and that's lost. And I wish that the companies would even bring it back, just because it would be so great. People would actually care about the back of the cards. And it's almost like a make the back of cards great again kind of thing, because they're really not. I mean, even if you look at Upper Deck, like they'll put 5 years of stats or 3 years of stats. It's like a joke. It's like, don't put anything on the back then. I don't know, like figure something out, but or go full in, because I know this takes work and takes time, but I would think with AI and with other tools, you can do this. The cartoon, okay, the cartoon's a lot. I get it. You need to hire an artist for that, and maybe there's no will for that. But the other stuff, the other elements can definitely come back. I don't see how you can put down like, the guy's hobbies or his favorite music, or I think people care about that personal touch, and there's a place for it still, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can get that information from the team. I mean, I remember the guide and record books would always have like information about the players, like what they did outside of hockey, or what what their hobbies were, their other interests were, or stuff like that. And these were, like you said, these were our records back then. This is what we looked to for information. I like career statistics even on modern cards, because at a glance you can see what their body of work was, like, what their better seasons were, what their best seasons were, right? Or if they don't have a lot of statistics, then you give us more information about the player, because they're probably a newer player that's only been around in the league for a year or 2 or 3, and maybe you don't know much about him, right? Like you look at somebody like a Joe Thornton, right, who had like a lot of statistics on some of his later Upper Deck Series 1 or Series 2 cards. There wasn't really room to say much about him, but at that point you kind of knew a lot about him because he had been in the league for like such a long time. So right. I feel that like the cards, they did a good job of educating us about the player, and that's what these cards don't really do now, is they don't really educate us so much. They're like there's a nice, exciting photo on the front. That's great. Maybe there's a line of stats on the back, and that's just like you said, kind of like a joke, right? And then like the bullet points back then are always just like had 2 games or 2 goals against the Flyers on February 12th in a 2-2 tie. And it's just like, whoop-de-doo, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's not really something you should put on the back of a hockey card. Now, if it's a career game, yeah, you put that, right? They had 3 goals and 3 assists in this game. Okay, wow, that's a record or whatever. But otherwise, I feel like a lot of time where, like was, second on the team with 18 assists. It's like, whoop-de-doo. That's the best thing you could tell us.
Yeah.
But you're right though. Like what you said, like these were like our records back then, like our records of what was going on, right? So that's what made the subset cards that much more important, right? Because they were kind of like that record. Like if you had a full set of cards, you pretty much knew what happened the previous season because you had all this information at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
there were Stanley Cup playoff cards. There's 7 of those that start off the set. So each card has like one of the playoff rounds, and then on the back it has like the scoring from that, which I think is a nice thing. I know Score did that in 10-11, and I liked it. I appreciated that.
I will say, I'll interject to say, like, this follows the same model as Topps baseball from those years where you had like the World Series cards, then you had like the league leaders. I mean, think about how crazy it would be if today, like Upper Deck would make like league leaders and put like the 3 faces of players on there who like had the most points last season. Like it would be kind of fun. And I understand Topps does Topps now and Upper Deck does like the game dated moments. So they're kind of doing that anyway. But I think people would find an appreciation for a subset in your card set, kind of looking back at the previous season. Because if your team won the Stanley Cup, let's say, you'd love those cards. And they'd have some more value than something that you got in the mail, I think, like game dated moments or something. And it would kind of recap your season in a binder. Like when you put these cards in a binder, like this set, it tells you what happened over the course of the season.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. And now I have Upper Deck cards from the last 10, 15 years in binders. And I got to tell you, if it wasn't for the date on the side, I wouldn't know what year it was from, because it's kind of like, it's all kind of the same after a while. There's very few cards that stick out, or there's no moments. It's all just players. And you can tell by the rookies what year you're talking about potentially. But this is a great way to recap the season at a time when maybe people only listened to it on the radio. Maybe hockey wasn't getting national coverage. Maybe you didn't watch the finals. Maybe your team wasn't in the finals, whatever. I mean, back then TV was a much more fragmented universe than streaming services of today. But, or you get to see it in color. I mean, some people saw black and white TVs in the 70s. I had black and white TV in the mid 70s. I remember watching Gilligan's Island and Tom and Jerry in black and white when I was a little kid, because we had a black and white TV still. Because it's, it was the early 80s. It wasn't like, people threw out all the TV sets from 5 years earlier. So just, so being able to see stuff in color, your favorite players in color, recap the season, and stats were obviously a big deal with collecting because kids would memorize all this stuff. Yeah, we lost that today, but it is a great design element. It makes these cards, these finals cards, much better than the rest of the cards in the set, I think, because of that.
Fun little fact about black and white TVs in hockey is that's the reason why the red line is dashed, so that people could tell on a black and white TV that it was a red line.
That's a great fact.
If it was just a solid line on a black and white TV, you couldn't tell if it was a blue line or a red line. So I think that's just a kind of a cool thing that they had to do back then. I mean, we had a black and white TV, we had a color TV, but it was like if my mom was watching the colored TV, then it was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to watch cartoons on the black and white TV because that beats nothing. You know what I mean?
Yes. There's like every family had a little black and white TV like in their kitchen or the place in the kitchen where you ate, but then the living room had like the better TV. And then forget about having your own TV in your own room. That came much later for me. That was more of a 90s thing than an 80s thing. But yeah, and you're like, oh, okay. I remember my black and white TV had like a little handle. Like you literally pick it up and had rabbit ears, and it didn't have cable on it. So it was one of those things where I'm constantly, putting tinfoil on the rabbit ears. Now everyone like over the age of 30 on this podcast understands what I'm talking about. or maybe older, 40. But anybody younger than that is like, what are you people talking about? I mean, technology is this changed a lot, and I think it's reflective in these cards, because you look at these cards and you realize the reasons why certain things are done in the set is because you had to cater to people's lifestyle, the way they were consuming the sport, which is very different from the way we do it today, that people are watching highlights on their phone, like on their commute home. I mean, that's something that we can never think about as kids, like that you'd have a TV in your pocket, right? And so that's where, we're in a different universe. So that's why, the cards you're showing even now, I mean, the backs of them with all this design element, all this sort of, material that is meant for you to consume, not just put cards in a binder and forget about them, but actually consume the cards.
Right. Another 12 cards in the set were first team and second team all-stars. And the backs talk about those little cartoons. They actually did little career highlights in cartoon form on the back of the all-star cards. I'm showing the O-Pee-Chee and the Topps versions here because obviously the O-Pee-Chee cards needed to have English and French. So they don't look as nice because they don't have that like hand-drawn comic book type font. It's just like a typewritten font because they had to make it smaller and have it for both languages. But I think that's kind of worth showing because a lot of people, they'll say, well, if you're going to buy one set, buy the O-Pee-Chee set because it has more cards, it's more valuable, whatever. And I'm a proponent of you buy both. You get both. If you're you collect what you like, obviously. But for me, I like to have both versions, the Topps versions and the O-Pee-Chee versions. And a lot of times it's because of those differences. They might look the same on the front, but on the back, there's maybe a lot more differences. Whether they truncate information, remove information because they have to make it bilingual, add more cards, use a different photo on the front, whatever, right? I like all of the above.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, no, I agree with that. And I always treat the O-Pee-Chee version as almost like this more fun, more hard to find parallel version of what you got in America, which was Topps.
There were also 6 NHL leaders cards, like goals leaders, assist leaders, point leaders, which is nice, and on the even penalty minute leaders. And on the back, it would list out like the top 10 or top 15 people in that category. So again, you got a really good look just at a glance, like who had the most goals this season, right? Like Phil Esposito, 61 goals, Guy Lafleur, 53 goals, Rick Martin, 52 goals, Danny Grant, 50 goals, right? Like you just got a quick glance, like who are the big players back then. And then there were also team leader cards, which are funny because like a lot of times, like the goal leader and the point leader, or the goal assist and point leader, were the same guy. So a lot of times they'd use the same photo. I mean, on this one, you could see that they have 3 pictures of Guy Lafleur. 2 of them are the same. I kind of want the third one to be the same because I think it'd just be funnier. Like Guy Lafleur, also Guy Lafleur.
That's such a strange card, though. Like, I don't know. Like, if you're gonna use, maybe because I have like OCD, but if you're gonna use him 3 times, then either all 3 should be different photos or all 3 should be the same. I don't understand why one of them is like, okay, it's gonna be weird having 3 times on here, so let's just change the photo as if it's a different guy. Like, you're not gonna notice it's the same guy. I don't know. It's just some of this is the decisions made on photography is always very, very odd. And I'd love to know more behind the scenes. We can only speculate on why things were done, but it's just always very odd to me.
It's even funnier on the cards where like there are guys who were tied, like maybe tied in points, tied in assists. So then you end up with like 5 or 6 little headshots, and they put the card horizontally, and then they just have to add more headshots, and it's even more chaotic. Like, because they'd say, well, they both tied an assist, so we need to show both of them, and I don't know. I get it, but it's just kind of funny. It's just kind of a design mess.
Yes.
Now, these were cool. The team photo cards. I like those a lot. Perfect idea. On the front, you have a team photo. On the back, you have a checklist that has just the team checklist, like what cards are in that set. Love this sort of thing. Would love to see this thing continue. I guess maybe they don't do team photos as much in cards because players get traded a lot. So, this is a 74-75 team photo. on a 75, 76 card. Of course, some of those guys are no longer on the team. And I don't know, I feel like maybe teams have higher turnovers now. Maybe that's the reason why they don't do it. Maybe it's just that extra effort. Like it's easier for them to go get a photo off of Getty Images to put on a hockey card. But if you want a team photo of the whole team, you have to like contact the team for that. Maybe that's more work that card companies aren't willing to do. But I don't know. I miss this. This is one of the things I like from those like mid 70s, I guess, to just the end of the 70s. Because
the 79-80 had team photos in it as well, the Gretzky rookie year. And then I think after that, they went away maybe after that.
The pinup posters from 80, 81.
Right.
And then after that, they just went away. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like for example, like we kind of bagged on the design element, but if you look at this card, like if you're watching, this looks great. Like the way the logo, the NHL logo, the team logo. And, if they brought back team cards, I know players get traded, but like if you look at the team photo, like we're looking at the Flyers here, I mean, the back of the card, I don't think lists every single player in that photo, obviously, and players get traded and whatever. But it's so what? It's whatever the photo was taken at the beginning of the season. That's the roster that started the season. Of course, players get traded over the course of the year, whatever. But it's cool. I remember buying this set and also 79-80. The first cards I did buy were the team ones because those are the ones you usually get in a $1 box or a $2 box because they're worth the least. And so I remember those are the ones that like I would try to buy at the expo or even at the national and say, okay, try to build the set. Let me get the cheapest cards I can find first. And often these are it. These are the ones that are in the boxes. So I have a lot of team cards. And it's always cool to look at just just the whole, the haircuts and the faces and because the photo also has the coaches in it sometimes. It's got a team executives. It's got all kinds of people in the photo that, goaltender coaches or whatever. It doesn't have just the players. So always fun. And yeah, something that if they brought back, it would be kind of fun. It would be kind of weird, but it would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at, again, like to just, if you're watching this podcast, like this Flyers card. I mean, there's 3 Hall of Famers on this card right here. 4, I guess, maybe Fred Sherrow is in the Hall of Fame, like who is their coach. But you got like Bernie Parent and Bobby Clark and Bill Barber. So like right there, you got like 3 Hall of Famers on the front of this card. So a lot of times this was like a cool way, like you go, well, I can't afford a card of this player, but I could afford this team card that also has the player on it, and it's like a $1 card and not like a $10 card.
Right.
All right. I want to talk real quick about some of the best rookie cards. So these first few cards
This won't take long.
So yeah, I mean, I really had to scrape here. I mean, there are some times where it's like there's like 5 or 6 Hall of Famers, and I look at this set, and there's exactly 2 Hall of Fame rookie cards in the set, and one is only in the O-Pee-Chee version of the set, and one is in both. So Clark Gillies is in the Hockey Hall of Fame, so he's got a rookie card in the set. And I mean, this isn't exactly Guy Lafleur or Patrick Waugh or I'll try to think of a non-Canadians player, Gilbert Perreault or Daryl Sittler, or you know what I mean? Like, he's in the Hall of Fame, but he's not the kind of player that like pushes the set necessarily. Whereas like you look at like 85, 86, you go, oh, well, Lemieux's in that set, right? And that just kind of makes that whole set more valuable.
Sure.
I put Ron Greschner as one of the better rookie cards in the set. I mean, the dude was on the Rangers for like, what, 15 years?
So I will say what one of the first cards I bought was Ron Greschner's rookie card, because when you're a Rangers fan, you grew up in New York in the 80s, Ron Greschner was like kind of legendary, not a Hall of Famer, but in New York, he's a well-known name. If New York had its own Hockey Hall of Fame, the New York Hockey Hall of Fame, I just invented that, he'd be in it. And, he wore no helmet, and he preceded, the Stanley Cup winning team. He wasn't on that team, but he was playing throughout the 80s when the team was sort of, not so great. And I remember I actually met him once, and I met him, he signed a photo for me in a Pro Set card at a show that we talked about recently off air, which was that Pro Set shows they were doing around the country back in the early 90s, and he was
Yep.
there. He was there signing with Stan Mikita and I think somebody else, I can't remember. And I remember like being like, oh, it's so cool. I got to meet Ron Greshner and he was really nice. And then after the show was over, like, well, show wasn't really over. I left at some point. And I remember he like walked out and he stood like next to me and he didn't even look at me. And he just hailed a taxi and just jumped in, like a very New York moment, like just hailed a cab, yellow cab pulls up. He jumps in the cab and drove away. And I was like 14 years old and I thought this was like the coolest thing in the world. So to me, Ron Greshner, I have his rookie card because I think he matters for New York hockey history, and played for a very long time. And people I know who went to games back in the 80s, he dated Carol Alt.
Yeah.
Like he was married to her even at one point. The model, if you don't know who that is, Google her. I think she ended up marrying another hockey player, so she clearly had a type. But it was so cool because the Rangers had like Hollywood type fans, and Carol Alt would go to the games with one of her best friends, Christopher Reeve.
Oh, wow.
Who played Superman, right? So in the 80s. So like the Rangers, New York, it always had this appeal among, kind of A-list type people would go to games. So so whenever I think of Ron Greshner, it really takes me back to that early 80s period I remember him at.
I remember he made a cameo appearance in the TV sitcom The Nanny.
Oh, did he really?
That? Yeah, I mean, you won't remember the episode, but like it was like I guess the main I never watched the show, but Fran Drescher's character, she's dating a guy who's on the Rangers, and I don't know, they're just hanging out, and he's just like, oh, this is Ron Greshner, Rangers legend or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he's just in like a scene or something. You know what I mean? Like they're just hanging out or whatever. And I was like, oh, hey, Ron Greshner, cool. You know what I mean? Like cool to see like a hockey player make an appearance in a
that crossover thing where they cross over into popular culture,
Yeah, I mean, we don't get that too much in the United States for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think whenever there's like a cameo appearance, it was always to me kind of just a cool thing. Pierre LaRouche scored 50 goals with the Penguins. He later scored 50 goals with the Canadiens, and he was on some of their Stanley Cup winning teams. So again, not a rookie card that's going to, probably a rookie card that you'd find in a common box, unfortunately, but still just worth noting. Nice action shot too, although could be the other guy's card because he's kind of pushing him out of the way. So
I will chime in to say Pierre LaRouche was another one of those early players I really enjoyed in the 80s because he was a Ranger for a while and was a teammate of Ron Greshner's. And I wish Tim was here because he played obviously with the Penguins. You're right. This card isn't great because it looks like it could be anyone's card. There's like 4 guys on here, and the other guy that he's doing battle with, it could definitely be his card, even though it would be a horrible photo of that guy, just like the back of his head. But we've seen that before. Another rookie that is not going to break the bank, and maybe you'll get it for like $5. But I will say Pierre LaRouche was the kind of a player that for a while in the late 70s was doing a point a game. Then he was injured a lot. I think if he hadn't been battling injuries later in his career, he might have been a Hall of Famer because he did put up points. He did score goals. But I think he's one of those players kind of forgotten now because, time does that to guys who don't necessarily, put up big numbers or break records, that kind of thing, or have longevity. But sometimes I wish like he'd go to an expo or show up at a show because I'd be there, I'd be there with this card or something else for him to sign for sure. And I'm sure if Tim was here, he can talk more about Pierre LaRouche and the Penguins of that era. But another card I bought on eBay, I remember a couple of years back, and I think I overpaid. It was like $6 or $7 for it with shipping. But a card that, like you said, won't be in a slab, won't be in a case, and maybe it'll be in a dollar box, but maybe it won't. So you may never find this card unless you go to CompC or somewhere else. So slowly chipping away at the set, but also trying to pick up the cards I remember from my childhood, because while this set came out the year we were both born, these players played in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of like, oh, when did this guy start out? It's like, when's his rookie? And you realize it was like almost 10 years before. In some cases, 12 years before, 13 years before. Ron Greshner obviously being one of those players who like by the 90s, the back of his card looked like a phone book. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
you know, he played like every season, you know, it was like a big stack of stats. So, but yeah, no, Pierre LaRouche is a name that I think a lot of people don't know, but they definitely should look at some highlights. He was a great scorer.
Yeah. Mike Marson, second black man to play in the National Hockey League after Willie O'Ree. This is his rookie card. Yeah, Marson played a couple of years in the league with the Caps. I think the first 2 years he played the most games for them, and then like kind of trailed off. And then at the end he played with the Kings. I'm including him here because of his, significance. He was one of the pioneers, one of the black pioneers in hockey. I did a article for Hockey News about rookie cards of black hockey pioneers, and of course I had to mention Marson for that reason. So kind of a cool card also. Action shot, he's looking up. Also kind of funny in the background. Oh, this is probably from a warm up now that I think about it, because other guys are standing around. But if you look all the way in the back, there's a guy wearing a lacrosse helmet because one of his teammates had I think a fractured jaw. So this teammate of his wore like a football helmet and like a lacrosse helmet. I forget who the player was, but just kind of funny. If you look way back on the card, you're like, well, what's that guy doing? Is he wearing a goalie mask?
I thought it was a goalie, actually. So I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should remember who it is because I've looked into this before and I've just forgotten. A couple other notable, I'm saying notable. I mean, there's more than these rookie cards, but I'm just pulling the ones that I think we would like, or that I think are notable. But I mean, obviously you could be like, oh, well, this guy had a rookie card and you didn't mention it. It's like, that's okay. Can't list them all, Danny Gare, I mean, he played in the league for like 14 years, mostly with the Sabres, but also with the Red Wings. So he was around a long time. And Grant Mulvey, I mean, he played in the league for about 10 years, 9 years, maybe, mostly with the Blackhawks. The reason why I'm including him here, not because he's a Blackhawk, but because he ended up being a part owner of the Chicago Wolves minor league team. I remember in 94, 95, when the Chicago Wolves started back in the old International Hockey League. And I remember Grant Mulvey was like team president and part owner and general manager. And he ended up being the coach for a couple of years, but he was involved in that ownership group that brought the minor league team to Chicago. And, 30 years later, the Wolves are still around. So, maybe Mulvey was a, respectable player in the NHL. And he did have a 5-goal game for the Blackhawks. But, as a hockey executive, he kind of made his mark there as well, if arguably not more, if that makes sense. And then in the O-Pee-Chee set, best rookie cards, we got, I can only really think of 2. So remember, O-Pee-Chee just had 66 more cards. So most of the guys in the O-Pee-Chee set are already in the top set as well. One is Colin Campbell, who ended up being in the Hockey Hall of Fame years later in the builder category. I mean, he was like a vice president of the NHL for a long time. He played in the NHL for a long time, and then he got into management and became a hockey executive. And then the other one is Harold Snepts, who played in the NHL probably about as long as Ronnie Greshner, maybe around 15, 16 years, somewhere around there. So, I just pulled those 2 because I thought they were obviously Campbell because he's a Hall of Famer, and Snepts because, 2 things, because he played a long time. And I remember Harold Snepts at the end of his career where he was like bald, like he had like the hair on the sides, but not on the top. And he had like that, almost like that Fu Manchu mustache. And dude looked like he was like, I don't know, like he could have been like 32 or 33, but when I'm like 14, he looked like 100 years old. He looked like Mean Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace, if you remember that cartoon and that comic book, right? And so it's just so weird to see like, oh my God, Harold Snepts with hair. It's just, just to me, it was just kind of a funny card. Or not funny, haha, funny, but like you said, it's just weird. You looked at like, oh, there's only 1 line of stats and not like 15 lines of stats. So, and also he was one of the last guys to play in the NHL without a helmet. Not the last, but one of the last. So I, give him props for that. All right. Couple of awful airbrushed cards. The awful airbrush alert. Well, Bill Clement traded to the Capitals. Looks like they painted a Capitals jersey on the upper half of him, but they didn't bother to paint the lower half of him into Capitals colors. So he's wearing, looks like he's wearing Flyer socks. And you notice that like his Capitals teammates on the cards are like wearing the right colored socks and he's not. So to me, it's just just such a weird. Bill Clement even said he hates that card. So
he looks like he's wearing like 5 jerseys actually, because it just looks out of proportion, looks very strange, and the airbrush job is not great. So yeah, it doesn't look good at all.
And that L on that Capitals logo is just insane.
It looks like Trump's necktie. It's just like this long red thing that goes on forever. Like I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've seen airbrush before, but this has got to be one of the worst ones ever.
And then the Ted Irvin card. Well, first of all, the airbrush job is just terrible, and you look at like. You know,
it looks like a painting, actually.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does. It looks like one of those things where like the cutouts where you stick your head through it and then you have your friend take your picture.
Yes, at the fair, at the carnival. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then you look at like how they diligently put like the yellow trim around the shoulder yoke and around the sleeve stripes, but then on the numbers are just like, let's just make them blue, I guess. Blue and blue, right? Like but then the double negative on this is that it's actually a photo of Ted Harris. So it's like they airbrushed the card and they didn't even get the player right. They did it to the wrong player. So, and I think Harris, I haven't looked at my article. I wrote about this card and it's a member of the Bad Hockey Card Hall of Fame, but like, I think Harris might have been retired at that point. So they might have even airbrushed not only the wrong guy, but a guy who wasn't in the league anymore. So it was just stupid. Like Topps got really overzealous. Like, oh my God, this third line player got traded. We must airbrush him into a new uniform. Like Clemente, I can understand. He was on the Flyers. He was a big deal in the 70s.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know much about Ted Irvin or Ted Harris, but I think if they didn't change his jersey, I don't think people would have been too upset about it. Now this one, Marcel Dion, was traded from the Red Wings to the Kings over the summer. Arguably, probably the biggest trade that happened that summer. I don't know what other trades happened over the summer. Now, in the fall, there was a bigger trade. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they recolored his Red Wings jersey, and I actually think they did a pretty good job on this. To me, it almost looks like, at a first glance, it almost looks right, and then you say, oh, number 12, and you go, well, he didn't wear number 12 with the Kings, right? He wore 12 with the Red Wings. He wore a different number with the Kings. You're like, okay, so that's kind of what made me like notice it first. But I think that one actually looks okay, but I guess it's just, I don't say it's awful, but maybe like a player of his caliber, like you look at like when Gretzky was traded to the Kings, they didn't do that to Gretz.
Right.
They had him holding up the Kings jersey. They didn't say, "Oh, let's just airbrush him into a purple jersey."
Well, no, I think by then the airbrushing was kind of gone. But I will say, I appreciate not just this photo. This airbrush job is actually not so bad, but just the set in general. I should mention there's actually action shots as opposed to just headshots. And so in this case, it's actually a good photo of him, like twisted and looking at the puck or whatever, following the puck. Yeah, the airbrush is not great, but it's so much better than the rest of them. And I can see how they needed to put him in a Kings uniform. But then it kind of, bewilders me because sometimes some of these cards would actually have a little message that says traded to blank. Mm-hmm. So part of me is like, well, is that too late for the airbrush job? Or why couldn't you give that treatment to all the players that got traded? Because if he was in a Red Wings uniform here, it would have been a much better photo probably. And why not? Like, who cares? Just tell the buyer of the card, hey, he's been traded.
Right.
As opposed to, we're going to go to the trouble of airbrushing this and doing all this work, blah, blah, blah. And then in some cases, some guys, we're going to mention they're traded. So anyway,
right.
So, so just be consistent. That's the one thing these cards lacked in this era, just being consistent and following a common tread line. It was almost like they were making it up as they were going along. So it's very hodgepodgey. And so we don't know the decisions that were made and the reasons why they were made. This is not the worst airbrush job in the world, but again, you kind of scratch your head and say, well, why? Then why did you do this? And, why this card and not that card and whatever. I mean, obviously he's a big name and you couldn't leave him out of the set. And maybe leaving him in a Red Wings uniform would have felt weird. But at the same time, you have to wonder, like, there had to have been a press conference where there was a jersey presented to him. I mean, that was very clever of Topps and O-Pee-Chee, in the 80s then to try to do that, as opposed to let's do an airbrush job, in the 80s, which I guess by then it must have gone away. I don't know when, you would probably know when airbrushing kind of disappeared.
89-90 was the last year that Topps
pretty late.
O-Pee-Chee did that.
Pretty late, later than I thought, actually, if I had to guess.
And the other guys in the Gretzky trade, they had their jerseys airbrushed, but not Gretzky.
Because he wasn't Gretzky. Yeah, of course.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it does look a little weird, but I don't know. It's just kind of, it kind of makes the cut here. There's a lot of altered cards in this set. I just picked a few, just for brevity.
The one next to it that you have, I mean, it looks
Bill Flett.
It looks like a knight or a guy in a t-shirt. I don't even know what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, he was traded and they just gave up. They just didn't even try. They're just like, just make it white. In fact, there's a lot of cards in 75, 76 O-Pee-Chee where they just put them either in white jerseys or gray jerseys. Just gray. And there were no teams wearing gray, but back then they just tried to make it look generic so that it didn't clash, but I think it looks worse. I mean, if they did a headshot and he's in with his old team, I think he was with the Flyers the previous year. He was on one of their cup winning teams, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's just an odd looking card. Although Flett has a great beard. He's like the Brent Burns before Brent Burns, or, just with that beard. So I wanted to just include that card for those two reasons. Great beard, but also because of that weird, just the way the jersey looks. But this next one's a showstopper. Dan Maloney, another Bad Hockey Card Hall of Fame inductee. But look at this, because somebody pointed out to me that the unaltered photo was actually used on a Fleer Throwbacks card from 2002, 2003. And I have that card. So looking at them side by side, and you look at this and you go, oh my God, how much effort did they put into this card? I mean, okay, the photo's a little tilted, whatever. But they painted him literally from head to maybe not toe, maybe head to the ankles.
Ankle.
But they even painted over the top of his hockey boots, because you look at his Red Wings card and it's like a straight line, almost like his socks are pulled over the toes of his skates. And you look at his Kings card and it's like the toes of the skates are over the socks, right? So yeah, so head to almost toe. Wow, just insane. Like they could have, this is one where they should have just said, don't we have a headshot? Can we just do a headshot so it's less work? Can we just crop it and just paint the helmet? Or can we just put the text now with Red Wings? You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, looks like they didn't really paint the stick. They didn't paint the boards. I mean, the colors could just be a little bit shifted. They obviously painted the ice, because the ice was never that blue, except for in an EA hockey game like NHL 94. You have blue ice in that, but this is just ridiculous. All right, couple of uncorrected error cards that are also rookie cards. Doug Riseborough, on his own rookie card, it's actually picturing Bob Gainey. They messed up a few Canadians in this set, we'll say that. And Mario Tremblay, another player had a long career. His rookie card is picturing Gord McTavish. Gord McTavish did end up playing in the NHL, but never with the Canadiens. And obviously he was never an alternate captain. So there's a few confusing things going on here. The first thing is that they just gave Gord McTavish a random jersey with an A on it. Here, put on this jersey. We're taking your photo, right? And then they ended up using his photo on Mario Tremblay's card. So it's just kind of this weird double negative, I guess. I don't know. Like, wrong player, wrong jersey, never played for that team, and the real guy who should be on the card isn't pictured on the card. So it's kind of an oddity. But those of you who remember 2 podcasts back, Doug Riseborough has bad luck with hockey cards because also on his 80-81 O-Pee-Chee card, we talked about that set 2 episodes ago, but on his 80-81 O-Pee-Chee card, he's not on his own card. They put Serge Savard by mistake. So I guess maybe people thought he was like really good because they kept mistaking him for a Hall of Famer. Like
could be.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, the O-Pee-Chee versions of these cards, there are 8 cards in the set that have traded variants. So obviously big trade went down where Phil Esposito went to the Rangers, Brad Park went to the Bruins, and of course Jean Rattel went to the Bruins as well. And so there are versions of these 8 cards with and without traded text. Brad Park, Jean Rattel, Phil Esposito, Carl Vadnais, Bob Paradise, Brian Hextall, Gary Bergman, and Pierre Jarry. So all of those players, 2 versions of their cards to update their trades that were made. Most of these were made in November, but I think the Bergman trade, kind of hard to tell. Looks like it says August 21st. So O-Pee-Chee tried to be on the ball with this, especially with the Phil Esposito, Brad Park, Jean Rattel trade, because that was one of the biggest trades in Bruins history, one of the biggest trades in Rangers history, I'd argue. I mean, you're a Rangers fan. Was that I obviously you weren't watching hockey back then, but does that kind of count?
Yeah, no, I think, that is definitely one of the biggest trades in team history in terms of the number of players moving around and the quality of players, of course. No, for sure.
So some variants to chase. And now I'm annoyed because I realized I don't have all the variants of this. Like, I bought the set and I was like, okay, I got the set. I don't have to think about it now. But then as I was looking through it yesterday, I'm like, oh, my checklists are marked. And, there's variants that I don't have. And so that'll give me something to look for.
Well, number one, it's a set of lies anyways. So you might as well go out and do some work, some legwork, Tim would say, and get the cards you need and upgrade. And maybe that's something you do at the National/Expo in 26.
Yeah, I like that idea. Get some checklists, get some of these variants. And I want to talk really quick as we wrap up this episode about some of the times that the 75-76 Topps and O-Pee-Chee design was used later on down the line. So 92-93 O-Pee-Chee, and that's a set that we should talk about on a separate show because it's such a weird set, because it was that one time that O-Pee-Chee did its own unique design from the top set. Like, it was a separate set. It was not just a mirror of the same set. But what they did was, in the set, they would put in some throwback cards. So they did like a throwback card of Daryl Sittler, but they use a different photo. So there's 2 Daryl Sittler cards here. One is from the anniversary insert set. So they took like 25 cards, like famous cards from the 25-year O-Pee-Chee history. So of course there's like the Patrick Waugh rookie and the Mario Lemieux rookie card and the Wayne Gretzky rookie card. And I guess for 74-75, they're just like, well, we don't want to really put. Actually, Clark Gillies probably wasn't in the Hall of Fame then. I think he was inducted years later. So they just picked, one of the best players of the 70s, and they grabbed Daryl Sittler. And so they reprinted his rookie card, but with an anniversary series stripe at the bottom. But then in the actual set itself, they put a card that looked like 74-75, but with a different photo. So if you're like, I must collect all things 74-75, this is one thing to get.
The design element was inspired by the set.
Yeah. Then in the 2001-2002 Topps O-Pee-Chee Archives reprint set, and I think every hockey card collector, every serious hockey card collector should have this set. And I wish they did more years of hockey archives. They only did it this one year, but they did reprints of the cards on nicer card stock with like a gold foil logo, archives logo on the front. But Clark Gillies, Pierre LaRouche, and Danny Gare are reprinted and put in that archive set. So I guess according to Topps, those would be the best rookie cards from that year. And so they're in that set. And I don't know if you ever collected this, the 2001, 2002 Upper Deck Vintage set.
I've seen cards from that set. I have a few, actually. It's very weird.
So it's really close. You might be thrown off by the bright colored background because that's definitely something that's early 70s and not like mid to late 70s. But if you look at this 2001, 2002 Upper Deck Vintage set, and then you look at it kind of side by side with like a Topps card from 75, 76, it's pretty freaking close. I mean, you know, you might say, oh, the team name's a little smaller, the player name's a little smaller, there's more photo of the player, or like the player photo's taller, whatever. That's fine. You know, there's some differences, but if you look at it, I mean, it's clearly just that design.
I never made the connection until you made it now. I never made the connection between two, but clearly it's inspired by. It's almost like, how can we modernize that set, the look of it, and still retain many of the elements? And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see side by side, it's totally a copy of it, and the back's even more so.
Yeah, the back. I mean, even just like the shape of like that, you know, like the statistics block, and then like instead of a player cartoon, they just have the player photo in black and white, but still just like that, just like the shape. Like you look at like the squares and the rectangles, and okay, so they don't use a hockey skate for the number, they use a puck, but close enough, right? I mean, you can really tell that it's derived from this design. So if you're a fan of this design of the retro of the old set, you'd probably like the Upper Deck Vintage set. And actually, for like a 3-year span, all they did was like borrow old Topps designs, because Upper Deck didn't have any designs from the 70s and 80s, you know,
Right.
for hockey anyway. Well, for baseball, 89, I guess. But and then the reason why I wanted to do this review was because when I saw that Topps Now hockey stickers for 25-26 were doing these signature moments retro inserts, and I guess they're just randomly inserted. They don't even say if it's 1 in 5 packs or 1 in 20 packs or 1 in 50 stickers or whatever. They just say, you know, stickers will, you know, they'll randomly replace it. So if you order a 5-pack of like the Matthew Schaefer rookie sticker, you have to order either a 5-pack or a 20-pack, then, you know, you might get one of these parallels. They're not guaranteed though. But you know, anytime Topps uses the old hockey designs, I have to take note, even if it's not something I'm necessarily like drawn to. But you know, the design wise, but you know, I like to see that, you know, and stuff like this kind of makes me long for Topps having like a hockey license to make like NHL cards, but you know, maybe not, because we see that's a conversation for another show. But
I was gonna say,
yeah, I mean, that's just a kind of a cluster. I look at like baseball people being like, oh, this box of Topps baseball cost me $300, and you know,
well, there's been this whole talk now of, you know, Topps is redoing basketball, so there's a lot of that, people going back now to Topps basketball sets of the 70s and 80s. So yeah, no, sure, it's a conversation for another time, but it is something that I think we all sort of think about in the hockey hobby, because so much of the vintage stuff is Topps OPC and the modern stuff is all Upper Deck. So how do you connect that bridge in that way? So stickers are one way to do that, obviously, and I'm glad that Topps is actually not ignoring the past, their own past, and trying to repurpose the designs, because you might not care about stickers or about those college cards that we talked about a couple of weeks back, but this is a chance for them to try to bring back those designs and bring in the people that are a little older like ourselves who are nostalgic for those sets.
All right. So any final thoughts you have about the 75-76 Topps and O-Pee-Chee hockey sets?
My final thought is that not the best design of the 70s, somewhere in the middle of the pack, you know, towards, you know, not great, but talking about it and kind of, you know, taking a time machine back in time to talk about it. It's interesting, talk about the players of that era and our childhoods, because some of these cards did spill over into our childhood, because, you know, they were considered, I mean, when I was a kid, if I could pick up a card from the 70s in the 80s, it was only 10 years earlier. To me, it felt like I was picking up a relic from a totally different time. because of the haircuts and the way the guys looked, and some of these guys have been retired already. So just, I'm glad we talked about this set because it's 50 years and both of us turned 50 this year. So kind of like that. And also the next time you're at a show and you're walking around and you look through a dollar box or you look through a showcase and you see a card like this, just stop and look at it and think about our podcast and think about some of the backstories, because all these sets have backstories. And I think it's always great to dig into them.
So, okay, I guess we'll wrap it up then. Thank you for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by purchasing a t-shirt at shop.puckjunk.com. And if you like to read, we have a weekly email newsletter that you could subscribe to at puckjunk.com/newsletter. And until next time, collect what you like.